America, my name is Osei-Frimpong. I come to you live every Friday about this time, and today I'm going to talk about the need for a black Haggadah. It's not obvious what the Haggadah is and why we need a black one, but the Haggadah is the text for the Passover Seder, and I think it's good because it tells the Jews who they are, it tells the Jews who's trying to get them, and it tells the Jews why God favors them, right? Who they are internally, like as favored people. It tells them who everybody else is who's trying to wipe them out, and it tells them that ultimately they will win because God favors them. And why you need a black Haggadah is right now blackness is defined externally. It's defined because it's a created identity. It's a created ethnicity that emerged out of the needs of the rather rapacious colonial and sociopathic whites. Like, for example, my dad's from Ghana, my mom's from South Carolina. My dad in Ghana isn't black. He's Ghanaian, he's Ashanti, right? So he only becomes black when he comes here, right? So there is no internal meaning about what it means to be black that's been spiritualized. It's only external, that externally imposed. So we need to actually process what it means and remind ourselves what it means to be black, because it's not obvious that it comes with a history, and that history is tied to the history of colonialism, and the history is tied to the history of like these awful white people who have all of these cultural institutions that legitimize their awfulness. And we need a cultural institution that clarifies and legitimizes the fight against their awfulness. And so what the Haggadah does is it's a rather fantastic like cultural experience. If you've never been to a Jewish Passover meal, do it and then watch this, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm just kind of right, because built into the ceremony is like an interrogation of what it means, right? And so there's a section where there's supposed to be four wise children or wise sons, or four children who ask questions, and they're all different kinds of questions. And the most interesting question is the question that the wicked child's supposed to ask. And the wicked child's supposed to ask is, what does this mean to you? What is all this to you? As if like it's just your thing and I do my thing and you do your thing and we're all just liberal individuals, and like it's nice that you do this, but like it's not, that important. Because the wicked child, part of their wickedness is they don't understand that part of what it is to be a Jew, which the wicked child is to be part of a community with a history that's intergenerational. And they can be individuals within the community. They're not individuals abstracted from the community. There are no abstract individuals. You can be an individual Jew. And if you think you're an abstract individual and you're not part of a community, you're a little bit forsaken. And also, you are confused and a little bit evil. There's a reason why this is called the wicked child. So that's like the black kid who doesn't know that they're black. And so they don't understand the community and the we. And the whole kind of cultural ceremony and ritual is to both remind people what it is to be a Jew, and also to like rejuvenate and sustain the community. So it's an education that actually does work, right? So there is no internal education that does work. And Alex Haley tried to fix this with Roots, right? So apparently when he wrote Roots, he's like, I wanted a myth for my people to live by. And I don't know if Roots did that. I don't think Roots did that, but it's a good aspiration. Do you know who does do this? And I'll give the chat. There is one black organization that does this very well, that has like the appropriate kind of black Haggadah energy that we need. That organization is, wait for it, the Nation of Islam. The NOI got it right about this part of the game. The Nation of Islam. The black Haggadah, you will find There is enough there because they have a story about who the whites are, who the blacks are, how the whites are evil, what it means to be black, what it means to be white, and it's got a myth that makes sense, that's explanatory to who the people are as a people. And that is actually, and so it internalizes the identity. So people aren't confused about who the devils are, and people aren't confused about what the stakes are. Right? And that is what is necessary, a spiritualization, and that's like an internal intellectualization of the problem. So it's not just like people doing bad things to you, right? Imagine so let's say that you have, let's say you were dropped in the middle of a football game. You know nothing about the rules of football. You don't know why it's a game. You know nothing about what the purpose of the game is. It's just that all of a sudden, people are hitting you. There are whistles going off, and all of a sudden, you kind of figure out over trial and error how not to get hit, and then how people somehow cheer for you if you move a certain way, but then they boo you if you do a different sort of way. But you don't know anything about the rules of the game. You're just kind of making it up externally by how people treat you. You don't know anything about the rules. Nobody's ever given you a game, right? So you don't know what you're doing. You've kind of figured out over trial and error how to make it through the game without getting hit and without too many people yelling at you. That's the black experience. That's the black experience without a Haggadah, right? And the person with the Haggadah is the person who knows what the game of football is. They know the rules. They know what to expect from the referees. They can plan certainly because they know what they're doing. They're not just, they didn't get their knowledge from an external imposition. Their knowledge was acculturated, so they know internally what's going on and who they are and what they're doing. That's the difference. The difference between someone who is thrown into a game and doesn't know anything about the rules of football, and then someone whose parent is a football coach and knows everything about it. Baseball's the same way. You can say golf the same way. Someone who knows why everything is the way it is and what their purpose is on the field in their different positions, and can talk about it at kind of an intellectual level, and knows why the other person's trying to hit them, and knows why can give a reason why the ref blew the whistle that time but not that time, as opposed to the other person who doesn't know the rule and is just playing, but just is playing scared because sometimes they get hit, sometimes they don't, and all this other stuff, right? So the Black Haggadah would actually be the rule book, would be the rule book of what it means to be black. So we need a myth on what, and W.B. Du Bois talks about this a little bit in his racist speech. Racist W.B. Du Bois. I'm going to hit the opening and talk a little bit more about kind of the historical origins, about why this is important and what we need to know.
To the beat, y'all. Yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I'll paint the White House black and it can feature in your front. To the beat, y'all.
So W.B. Du Bois talks, kind of goes into something similar when he talks about the conservation of in his speech on the conservation of the races. He's like, race is it's not a biological construct, it's a historical construct, but it's real insofar as we built entire institutions in order to support it. So we need to know the history of these institutions, and we need to know what these institutions mean and how they are kind of contradictory in order to understand who we are and the unique contribution that black people can make. And make no mistake, the progress comes through contradictions. Progress comes through contradictions. People who are satisfied and self-satisfied, they don't progress. They just kind of get lazy, fat, and die. Progress comes through contradictions. And black life in the United States is an enormous contradiction because we are, a republic of equals with people who are steadily and used to be explicitly, but now implicitly subhuman, right? So if black people were actually equal, then our contribution wouldn't be as meaningful as it is. But actually mediating on the black struggle is not just good for black people, it's good for America. There's a universality in it that is not true of the Jewish Haggadah, right? So the Jewish Haggadah teaches Jews how to be Jews and who to fight and why and what it means and that they're favored. It's pretty, everybody else is not really, it's not about them. It's a particular identity and that's how they get meaning in their life, right? It's not really about them, who they are, and the only thing you need to know about people who aren't is that they're a threat to you, right? It's a particular identity. The black struggle and the black Haggadah talks about the black struggle, but it also has a universal import. So because what's good for black people isn't just good for black people. It's a universal source, but it's a particular source in the black struggle, but it actually improves America and improves the project of freedom and democracy, right? So the black Haggadah is good for everybody, but it is about the black experience. And part of the black experience is knowing how we are similar to our oppressors and knowing how we differ, right? And so it would start with blackness and start with the black experience and what it means to be black. But you can't really talk about what it means to be black unless you talk about what it means to be white in a really important way. So, and this is why I think that part of the United States, one of the big problems with our race conversation is we're not honest about how awful white people are made. Their families make them awful, their business structures make them awful, their stories make them awful, their Christianity makes all of these institutions that make awful white people the awful people that they are in a way that actually kind of holds back the progress of the nation, which is why, the progress of the nation is going to come through the mediation of the black struggle, right? Martin Luther King is probably one of the best Americans that was produced in the 20th century, and he taught Americans how to be Americans by thinking through the black struggle, right? So the black struggle has a universal import insofar as we are the standing contradiction. We are as a community and as we are made in the institutions that we are allowed to have subhuman and sub-American. Yet we are inextricably American. So we're a standing contradiction, and kind of working through the contradiction of black life in America has a universal import for, constitutional democracies all over the world, right? So whereas working through the Haggadah has a particular import for the Jewish people, working through the black struggle has a universal import for the realization of freedom in the world. So it's actually, there's a public interest in the formulation of a black Haggadah, except the public shouldn't really form it. I should form it, or black people should form it. And then, it kind of grows from that because we are the contradiction. Asking self-satisfied white people about what needs to be solved in America is not the recipe for progress in America. It's the recipe for all of the problems in America. It's pretty much both Republican and Democratic politics, which is why the League of, people with pussy hats and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, fetishes, and then the Republicans with the MAGA hats, none of them are going to actually lead to progress in America. It's got to start with the racial struggle in a powerful way if we're serious about how do we work through in a universal way how to make a better nation, right? So particular justice for the black people is a progress for the nation and for the world, right? So in the same way that if you steal my bike and I get my bike back, it's not just good for me, it's good for property, right? It's good for the realization of property right. it seems like it's just particular and good for me, but it's not just good for me, because if I don't get my bike right, and we have all of these stories about why it's legitimate that someone could steal my bike, then that's not just bad for me because they stole my bike. It's bad for like how we understand property, right? So the Black Haggadah will not just dignify the Black people and explain why reparations are necessary and help us think through that. It'll have a universal import. And one other thing, and let me just dig down a little bit deeper about what it is about the Haggadah that makes it special. It is an intellectual wrestling with what it means to be a people, and it's built into the ceremony. So you have like the regular ceremonial aspects about the oppression, but then it's this question and answer and the feedback and the emphasis on what it is to be an individual member of the community is to be an individual member of the community, not an individual member abstracted from the community. That means an individual participant with this history of struggle that and this history of vulnerability and the ultimate favor of God. And all of that is an internal understanding of what it means to be a Jew. It's not just an external one. You're not letting the Nazi treatment or the Egyptian treatment define what it means to be a Jew. Rather, you're meditating on it and mediating on it and thinking about it and working it through what it means to be a Jew internally, and with the help of divine favor. Right? So we need a Black Haggadah, and it'll be of national import. Now, depending on who you talk to, the 1619 Project is a Black Haggadah, but it needs to be obviously spiritual, obviously tied to freedom, and it could actually be secular, insofar as self-determination has normativity in America. As in, like, why is it good? Well, because it's a form of self-determination. We need to show all of the different variegated attacks against Black self-determination. Look, Black families, there are lots of ways to determine yourself. Property is a form of self-determination. I get to claim something that's not mine, and you have to recognize it as mine. That has been thrown off for Black people in America. They call it gentrification, but it's pretty much telling Black people what you have is only what you have insofar as white people don't want it yet. And when they want it, they can just take it or buy a boss for it, right? So, like, that's a form of self-determination. Property. Another form of self-determination is the ability to decide like how you want to organize your family, what kind of family you want. Black people, and this is actually, I feel like, an under-researched topic, and I haven't found good research on it because everyone either talks about, like, no one's put together a systematic study on the attack on the Black family, like from slavery to like the liberalization of divorce in Black communities, because we don't have an internal fight, and we don't have a Black Haggadah that tells Black people not to divorce. But we have a lot of norms that say, like, well, if your man's a bus driver, bounce, adjust your crown, queen. And by the way, this king and queen nonsense is not really good for Black working class people, because it confuses. It's the anti-Haggadah. It confuses people about what it means to be Black, because you can't have kings and queens without peasants, and apparently peasants shouldn't marry Ebony Williams. By the way, I might do a show on that Monday. My free game show will be on like the Ebony Williams debacle. And probably next Thursday's show is going to be on like the H1B bigotry, the H1 bigotry of Ramaswamy, making a whole presidential campaign out of kicking Black people, because there's nothing more American than kicking Black people. Look, he's a Brahmin from India. He was, he's got 5 generations of kicking poor people and degraded people, stigmatized people over in India. Now he comes to the United States and does what his family's been doing for generations over there, kicks the poor and degraded for profit here. So the H1 bigotry of Ramaswamy needs to get talked about, because his ass wouldn't have been here if not for the civil rights movement. Because before 1965, we didn't like brown people in India. We didn't let them in. There were hard quotas about how many browns were in the United States. There are only like 200,000 Indian Americans in the United States in in 1980. Right? So this onslaught of, and like, insofar as they're against reparations, I'll call them an onslaught. This invasion of Indian Americans, now they're in the millions, is, and, you know, many of them come over on H-1B visas, like Ramaswamy's parents. I don't care how good you are at math. If you're going to come here and talk bad about black people, you need to go back. If you're going to come here and fight against black justice claims, you need to go back. All right. I'm going to go. You know, I went out right before this. I did my run, and I put my glasses down, and I can't find them now. By the way, you should, if you appreciate anything I'm doing, you should go to Super Chat and give to Super Chat, because every dollar I make this week and next week goes to sending my kids to Bulldog Soccer Camp. Let's send the Osei-Frimpong 3 kids to this fancy soccer camp, because I coach my kids' rec league team, and I'm pretty hard on them as a rec coach, and they're pretty good soccer players. But I want to send them to like this camp, so they know that I'm not unduly hard on them. I just expect them to be good, and I want them to be with other girls for 3 days, and my son too, who are at least as tough and as good as they are, so they know that they can come home and be grateful that my dad, and I kind of put, like, you know, my coaching philosophy in context. So I want to pay for them to go to this fancy camp, but I just found it a few weeks ago, and it's $500 a pop. So it's $1,500 for my kids to do 3 days of soccer. But I got the schedule for the camp, and it looks like they know what they're doing. And I want my kids to go. And so I'm going to pay for them to go, and you can help me send them to go, because every dollar from this week's show is going to go to this unforeseen, but I think important experience. And, like, you know, I might come back with pictures and stuff, or I won't be there, but, like, yeah, it'll be good. It'll be good. You'll know your money's going well, going to some place where it's worthwhile, because I'm telling you exactly what I'm going to spend it on. It's going to be on this soccer camp, which is expensive. Yeah, they play with me. You know, my dad's gonna in, and my mom's from South Carolina, but my dad's gonna in. And before the divorce, my dad used to play soccer with me, so I play a lot of soccer with my kids, and I think the camp would be good for them. Anyway, thank you for your time. I will see you next week with the show on, well, free game on Monday, where I talk about the problem with just with clowning on working class black men who, like, work for a living, which I think Ebony Williams is doing, even if she admits that she doesn't think she was. All right, take care.